Single Dad's simple act of kindness changes his life forever. The rain was falling in heavy, merciless sheets the night everything changed. Cars sped past without slowing, their headlights streaking through the darkness, while a lone figure pushed a broken stroller across the sidewalk, one hand gripping the handle, the other holding a thin jacket tight around his shivering daughter. Her small face peeked out from beneath a faded pink beanie, eyes blinking against the rain, trusting her father completely despite the storm that surrounded them. That father, Daniel, had no idea that within the next hour, one small act of kindness would alter the entire course of his life. He didn't know he was walking toward a moment that would test his humanity, his exhaustion, and his beliefs. But fate was waiting for him at the bus stop ahead, cold, drenched, and disguised in a way no one would notice. If you believe kindness still matters in this world, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps inspiring stories like this alive. Daniel had been fighting a silent battle for months. After losing his wife to a sudden illness, he had been thrust into a life of single parenthood overnight. The bills piled up faster than he could pay them, and he found himself working 2 jobs, one in the day at a mechanic shop and another at night delivering groceries. He rarely slept more than a few hours, and even then only when his daughter, little Emma, wasn't coughing herself awake from the cold they couldn't quite keep out of their tiny apartment. Still, every day he told himself that as long as he kept moving, kept pushing, kept giving his daughter love, things would eventually get better. But hope was starting to feel like a luxury he could no longer afford. That night, after a long shift in a broken-down car on the way home, Daniel had no choice but to walk with Emma in the rain. The stroller's wheels were wobbling, squeaking with every step, and Emma's blanket soaked through, but his arms were too tired to carry her the whole way. His shoes felt like they were filled with water, and each breath came out in a visible cloud. But all he cared about was getting home where it was dry, warm, and safe. That was when he saw the hunched shape sitting beneath the dim streetlight near the bus stop bench. The figure looked like a pile of wet blankets at first, but as Daniel got closer, he saw a fragile old man curled into himself, trembling violently, his thin, mud-streaked hands clutched together for warmth. People walked past him without a second glance. Some turned their heads away. Others stepped around him, umbrellas tilted to avoid even the slightest interaction. But Daniel stopped. He felt something deep inside him tug, an instinct, maybe compassion, maybe memory, reminding him of his own father who had once been strong but had grown frail toward the end. He hesitated, not because he didn't want to help, but because he wasn't sure if he even could. He barely had enough for his daughter. How could he help someone else? Yet when he looked at Emma's small, trusting face, he realized this was exactly the kind of moment that would teach her who he was, who she should grow up to be. So he crouched down, shielding the old man from the rain with his own body, and pulled out the only thing he had to offer, the warm meal he had packed for himself earlier but never had time to eat. He placed the container gently beside the man, and then took off his own jacket and draped it over his shaking shoulders. The old man didn't look up. He didn't speak. But Daniel noticed the way his breathing slowed, the tension in his hunched frame softening just a little under the unexpected warmth. Daniel whispered a soft prayer that it would help, even if only for the night. And then he pushed the stroller onward, hoping he hadn't made a mistake he couldn't afford. The next morning, life returned to its usual grind. Daniel rushed through work, juggling tasks, worrying about bills, and trying to shake off the exhaustion that clung to his bones. When he returned home late in the evening, carrying Emma in his arms because the stroller had finally given out, he found a black sedan parked outside his building. He thought it belonged to one of the neighbors until the door opened and a sharply dressed man stepped out, holding Daniel's worn jacket in his hands. The man introduced himself as Samuel Harrington, CEO of a large real estate company, philanthropist, and one of the city's quietest millionaires. But last night, he hadn't been any of those things. He had been the soaked, shivering old man on the bench. He explained that he had been conducting an anonymous social experiment, trying to understand what life felt like for those without resources or support, drifting through the streets unseen. Most people ignored him. But Daniel did something no one else had. He stopped. Samuel told him that his simple act of kindness had shown him something he had almost forgotten, that there was still goodness in the world, still people who helped without expecting anything in return. He said that Daniel's compassion had moved him deeply. So deeply, in fact, that he wanted to change Daniel's life in return. He handed him a set of keys, a letter, and a card. The keys were to a fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. The letter was an official job offer, stable hours, good pay, full benefits, and the card contained a note that said simply, "For your daughter's future." Inside was enough money to erase every bill, every late notice, every burden Daniel had been carrying alone. Daniel stood frozen, overwhelmed, unsure if he was dreaming. He felt his knees weaken and tears blur his vision as he held Emma close. For months he had prayed for a break, for relief, for a chance to breathe, and here it was, arriving in a way he could never have imagined. Samuel placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and said that sometimes the smallest kindness can reveal the greatest hearts. From that day forward, Daniel's life transformed. He no longer woke up wondering if he could keep the lights on. He no longer worked himself past exhaustion. He tucked Emma into bed each night in a warm, safe home, knowing she would grow up seeing her father not as a man who had struggled, but as a man who had chosen compassion even when it cost him something. And that compassion had returned to him in ways he could never repay. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us share more inspiring stories with the world. Before you go, comment below. Kindness matters.